Thanks, Lou. You know the expression, dress for the job you want, not the job you have? Well, tonight I've got my ORCID t-shirt on and my Crossref hoodie. I'm lucky that I don't have to pick because I currently work at Crossref, but my previous job was at ORCID. And before I get going, I would like to thank Anna, my former colleague at ORCID, who wasn't able to be here and present this week, but she and I collaborated on the presentation, and I hope there's some of her spirit as well as just some of her information here as well. So may I start with just a few points in common about the type of organisations that Crossref and ORCID are. We're both infrastructure organisations, and infrastructure is the stuff that you don't notice until it doesn't work anymore. I don't know if anybody had an experience during the pandemic or elsewhere in their life where their internet went down, or there was work on the water supply and they couldn't boil the kettle when they wanted to. Well, what we do is really the backbone of a lot of scholarly communications. And in a way, it's good that you don't know it's there until it breaks, because hopefully that means that we just work quietly in the background without being too inconvenient. We're both membership organisations. This is a really important part of what we do, that when organisations become members of Crossref and ORCID, they're not just customers in the classic sense of the word, they're partners in what we do, and effectively their membership fees are paying to support the work that we all do together. I'll say a bit more about that later on. As Lou said, we are both organisations in the business of persistent identifiers. ORCID are the people behind ORCID IDs, and Crossref, we are the infrastructure behind DOIs. And thank you, Emma, for mentioning DOIs already. It makes me feel at home. And hopefully with this group, we've got a lot of people who are already familiar with the world of DOIs. Just like protocols.io, there's a lot we can say about the open information that we provide. All of our code is open source. The data that we have is made publicly available for all sorts of reuse, including retrieval in bulk through public APIs. And we're both community-driven organisations. Our governance and the decisions we make, everything we do is for the community and with them. So this is Crossref's homepage, and our main phrase there is that we make research outputs easy to find, cite, link, assess, and reuse. And at ORCID, that ORCID provide this persistent digital identifier for researchers. Here's an example of both of our work in action. This is actually a paper published by a cousin of mine. I like using him as an example because he has his ORCID ID next to his name, Alexander J.K. Wilkinson, and the article also has a DOI. What about the ways that we work at ORCID and Crossref? ORCID have their principles, Crossref have their truths, but the idea is the same. We have a set of statements about the work that we do and how we do it. It sets out the way that we are governed, who is invited to join us, and so on. And we're both independent, not-for-profit organisations. Those of you who are based in the US will probably be more familiar than me about the intricacies of the difference between 501c3 and 501c6. Suffice to say that we won't go into the details here, but it means that these organisations are independent. They can't be sold or bought or otherwise managed by a commercial entity. And for Crossref, our tax exempt status means that we have an obligation to provide benefit to the broader community, not just to our members. Our community governance and participation models are quite similar as well. Both organisations have a board of directors. And to ensure effective governance and get input from a wide range of members and other stakeholders, we have various committees. So this membership model is participative. It's inclusive by design, and active citizenship is encouraged. In terms of participation, as well as just being a member and depositing metadata with either organisation, we also make our roadmaps open so that people can comment and see what we're doing. We both have a community forum, and we both have an ambassadors programme. At Crossref, our ambassadors programme is still relatively young and it tends to be very bespoke. We don't have a list of things you need to do or particular criteria for ambassadors. We're mostly looking for enthusiastic people around the world in different countries with different language skills who we can have a mutually productive relationship with to help pass the message about Crossref, and also for the ambassador so that they get some recognition for what they know and their role in helping to spread the word. And at both organisations, it's one member, one vote. So no matter how much you pay in membership fees, it doesn't affect your ability to influence the elections. The financial model also, in terms of providing all of this information and infrastructure for free to the user, we're both funded by membership fees. And as not-for-profit organisations, that means that the surplus that we make is reinvested in people and technology to support our existing tools and services and to maintain them. What about then the concept of community? There are lots of different meanings of community. Among them, affinity, collectivism, a community of practice where we find ourselves today, a membership group, having influence, and also reinforcement. And at both organisations, we engage in all 6 of these. And what about the nature of collaboration? These reasons are a lot of what I've most enjoyed about working at both organisations, that there are lots of discussions. We often end up starting with a question that seems fairly simple. Before long, it rapidly gets very complicated and very sticky. But we then work our way through to normally a solution for today and another question for tomorrow, because often the kind of problems that we're facing are not things that we can fix immediately. There are things that we can do in the short term, and there are often discussions that need to happen in the longer term too. And this last point about people and relationships and trust is really important. Before I worked at either of these organisations, I tended to think of these identifiers and the infrastructure as being largely a technical solution. But the longer I work there, the more I realise it really is about building relationships with people, organisations. Before you can go anywhere with the technology, you have to have a human connection first. Just some examples there of the ways in which Crossref collaborates. Perhaps some of you already are involved in some of these. Perhaps you even follow us on Twitter. There are lots of different ways to join in. To reference CSCCE's own community participation model, at the moment we're somewhere in the middle. We've been going 20 years now at Crossref and 8 years at ORCID, and we're probably with a foot in each side of contribute and collaborate, but we've got big ambitions to head towards the co-creation stage. So in summary, these are the methods or the mechanisms we use to work with our community to build our shared open infrastructure that supports scholarly communications and is responsive to changing needs. The point about enduringness, I tried the word endurance, that didn't sound quite right, so I settled on enduringness. Thank you for bearing with me. But yes, this idea of persistence, something that's going to be around for the long term. And this point about common ground and space to diverge, this is a big challenge for everybody in the world now as we look at in issues of inclusion and diversity everywhere, is we need to have enough in common. That means we're doing something collectively, but we need to have enough space that not everybody's obliged to do the same thing all the time, and there's room for growth and just general difference in what people do. So this last point, we say at Crossref that we're smart alone, but we're brilliant together. And thank you to those of you who've done anything to help us along the way. Every time you cite a DOI using its link rather than URL, that's already a great step. And anything more than that, thank you very much, and stick with us. We're enjoying the journey with you. Thank you.